Rick and Morty comic issue 10. We start out with Rick seeming to wake up from unconsciousness surrounded by fire, and he hopes that the evil Jerry died in the explosion. Then he sees ugly Morty approach him and taunt him as a disappointment because he was woozy from the explosion. I guess he was out for a long time so that Morty had enough time to go to him from his house. I guess the reason he survived was because he used a force field to protect himself just in time. But that should have been shown properly. I mean, in his big fight with the president in the season 3 finale, we saw him use a force field, and he even deflected bullets. Not explaining how he survived and how he's the only one here is narratively lazy and confusing. Then Morty wakes up from a nightmare with a bandaged chest, and Summer tells him that he's at her apartment and their base was destroyed. She has an apartment of her own as a rebel. I guess the landlady was sympathetic to her and lied about her identity. Okay, but that doesn't explain what happened properly. I still feel like the story as a whole in it. How did they survive being right in the middle of an explosion? How did they get away from the bomb in time? There were seconds on the timer. We should have seen Rick create a huge force field that protected all three of them. That has to be what happened. But then why did they get separated? And why did Rick pass out when he should have been protected? Morty wants to find Rick, saying that it's their only way out of here, and Summer's calmly given up and thinks Ugly Morty won either way. It turns out Rick's still refusing to tell Ugly Morty where the portal gun is. His bad social skills really backfire on him here. And he says that it broke in the explosion that Jerry set off. And he immediately asks him why he thought that was a good idea. It's always good that Rick keeps lightening the mood, because this arc would be too grim and tedious without it. Rick tells them that once the battery on the portal gun will run out, it'll be useless. I kinda like that Rick references game here and acknowledged a good game on it. But one, obviously there were way more good games on it than that. I even LP'd them. The Sonic games. And two, since when does Rick know about any video game stuff when he's always just sciencing? This isn't Rick and Morty at all. And three, can anyone talk about the Game Gear without just using the same tired joke everyone makes? I get it, its battery life sucked. It still had exclusive games I would have liked to play. Anyways, Ugly Morty leaves his mother alone with Rick, and Summer talks about how Ugly Morty has a private security force called Walkers that protect his compound. They're such mindless robots that they even kill homeless people for just loitering. Okay, so that's evil of him. But it seems more in a Rick sense where he's just irresponsible, not thinking things all the way through. Cause he wasn't there, so he's not saying just as planned. So we don't know if this was on purpose or not. It should be obvious not everyone near his compound would be malicious. But maybe he didn't know that? After Rick tells Ugly Morty that he knows Summer and Morty are gonna come for him, Ugly Morty laughs at him and asks him how he thinks he, Summer, and Beth got in this world if Rick never existed there. Someone shows up and tells him about some intruders, and he tells them to get the place in complete lockdown while Beth will stay here with the prisoner. At least it's sweet that he insists on, like, having his mother always around him. Like, as a 14-year-old. He hasn't forgotten that he's a 14-year-old. Like, even though he's a tyrant, he still clearly loves his mother. I just don't know why he calls her mother. He's smart enough to put a dozen guards on this door who will shoot to kill if anyone tries to get in or out. And Rick's clearly concerned. Morty and Summer shoot at the bad guys, and Summer shoots a convenient crate of explosives while telling Morty to get down. Sure is convenient that already Morty's recovered enough from the bullet wound to his side that he can run around and do all this. Even though he was in pain just from moving after he woke up earlier. And if he was given some convenient medical cure to his wound off screen, then why didn't he get the healing thing before he woke up if he could get it at all? I'm assuming he just has incredible willpower to just ignore the pain he's in the entire time he's acting like he's not injured. But meta-wise, I wouldn't be surprised if the writer just forgot he was supposed to still have a bullet wound at this point. Morty sees Rick's portal gun and he's confused, and Summer smashes some glass around it and says she needs to swap the batteries. Morty asks where she got that, and she reveals that she's not here to save Rick. I mean, she did show that she hated him earlier. She called him arrogant and everything. She reveals that several years ago, when she and Morty were kids, She brought her mom and a crying Morty to this world with the portal gun she stole from Rick. I guess that Rick had to make a new portal gun if he survived long enough. By the time they arrived, their battery was nearly dead and they left it all behind. Even their Jerry to start over in a world without Rick, because Rick destroyed their world. And we see the damaged buildings that remain of it. She talks as if plenty of worlds get that fate and it's only inevitable. As if she saw that that was the case when they're looking for a world to escape to with the portal gun. And considering that in the show, Rick accidentally ruined humanity with a mutation virus, she's right. But she's missing the fact that Rick didn't do it on purpose. Although, literally the first scene we ever saw with Rick had him planning on destroying the world with a neutron bomb just because he got drunk, and Morty had to stop him. So maybe it isn't just exaggerating and demonizing Ricks. Maybe a lot of them just got too drunk. I mean, this is a series where not just one, but there was a Rick who Cronenberged all the people of his planet and like made them genetic monsters. And then there was a Cronenberg Rick who turned them all into humans. A thing that happens a lot with Ricks, apparently. And like, the show Rick had to go to another universe where the same exact mutation virus happened, and it got cured. So this does happen a lot with Ricks. It makes perfect sense that she'd hate him and call him a disease then. Because while I love the character myself, he'd be pretty threatening in universe. But I still like the character, because like, he's such a deep character that even on his TV tropes page, there's so many tropes that they have to be organized by folders. You'd never see that in Sonic. This version of Summer is like a more realistic deconstruction of Summer, because she inevitably turned on Rick. While our Summer is still loyal to Rick because she just sees him as her grandpa and he doesn't do much to her. Then the bullshit comes in. Apparently, being in this universe did something strange to Ugly Morty, making him smarter and more cruel, just like Rick. Why? Nah, let's not explain that. Let's just go to the next panel instead! Wow, that's frustrating. Even when I first read the comic, I was disappointed that we didn't get a lot more elaboration on this. It's an explanation that's a definition of a booty shark because it just raises further questions. Sure, most Mortys aren't a genius from the 5th grade, so no wonder they felt the need to explain why he was so special, but it would have been way less confusing to explain that this Morty, by random chance, wasn't born learning disabled or whatever. There's versions of Rick that are a wasp or some other kind of species, so apparently they don't have to be exactly the same and have the same DNA, so it would have been fine to have a Morty be born a genius at that point. We could have been told that there was something in the air here that was the cure to his learning disability. I don't know. It would have honestly made more sense to have him be just a genius all along, like the previous issue told us. It was a little confusing, but it's an alternate universe Morty, so it's not that hard to believe. It was already confusing and lazy enough that every single Morty has the same clothes they always wear. And the same goes for Rick's and Jerry's. I guess it's part of a person's DNA which color is their favorite, so it never changes. But still, you'd think that different Mortys would have yellow shirts with different designs at the very least, and that's just talking about the Mortys. It would have made more sense if we were just told that every Morty has this Rick potential, because he's Rick's grandson, and spent tons of times on adventures with him as his mentor. Summer reveals to Morty that a day after her brother's rise to power, he came to her with the plan to get rid of every Rick by using what little battery the portal gun had left to send back a creature he developed, knowing that it was too risky to send a mere human through on such low power. At least they explained that. It makes more sense that of course he used Rick's portal technology to create the interdimensional portal. She explains that she tried to talk him out of it. Even though she just called Rick a disease who inevitably destroys every world. And yet this is why she fought and left Morty? Also, the flashback just lazily skips past showing us why Ugly Morty became ugly. Why? If she has every reason to hate Rick's, why didn't she just agree with him and side with him? They don't know what to do with her character in this arc. Wouldn't the entire family hate Rick just as much as he did? I could understand her fighting and leaving him because he rose to power, but apparently that wasn't it. One moment she's calling Rick arrogant and stuff, and the next she has faith in him, and then she says she's not here to save him? Summer explains that she plans on leaving this world with Morty by using the intact battery of Rick's smashed portal gun and the portal gun of her own Rick. Morty says that they can't leave Rick, just because he's family. Summer says that Ricks have destroyed tons of worlds and there's been plenty of Mortys that died because of their own Rick. Again, it's smart writing to be able to deconstruct Rick like this. It's the writer thinking about the implications of the series. It's good to have him get called out for a change, so that the audience doesn't just hate him from feeling alone and seeing how flawed he is. Summer tells Morty that she's looked across dimensions, and the only universes in which he survives past puberty are ones where he doesn't meet Rick. Except for the fact that we saw tons of still living Mortys with the Council of Ricks in the Citadel. I guess she's saying that their adventures are dangerous, and so she's just assuming that most Mortys won't survive past puberty. And the Mortys that were living in the Citadel, I think they were all the ones that their Ricks were killed by the evil Morty. But Morty's 14, isn't he already past puberty? She's definitely a valley girl. Morty's only response is that you can't abandon your family. Although Rick isn't even the grandpa of this particular Summer. She's being purely logical, for Summer for once, and Morty's just being emotional. Then reality ensues as Beth actually decides to help Rick escape. She naturally says, "You think I like living in a totalitarian regime run by my teenage son? For God's sake, he made me remarry Jerry!" And that's a surprisingly effective line because while it might seem like she's just whining out of context, the first issue alone showed us what Jerry is really like. She plans on taking Rick to where the portal gun is kept so she can escape with him. Then fortunately the writer's self-aware again, as Rick actually asks what I was thinking. Why did she torture him first? She feels that it was cathartic for her because she's got unresolved anger from her childhood. I mean, he did abandon her when she was a kid to be a scientist after all. Summer tells Morty that she's not going to force him to come with her and gets him the portal gun, which has enough charge to send 2 people, and says that he can choose between Rick and her. Then she narrowly avoids an explosion behind her and pushes Morty, and her evil brother approaches her in a machine with impractical pogo stick legs on it that seem too thin and flimsy to support the machine's weight. He demands her to return the portal gun, and he tells her that while they both wanted the same thing, she was too weak to take the next step, and he tells her to think of all the Mortys who died because her moral code objected, even though they would have died anyways, as he didn't need her help killing the Ricks. She just says that that's something a Rick would say and makes him mad, rather than really explaining why she didn't want to kill all the Ricks. He tells her that he's nothing like Rick, and she naturally asks for proof. I mean, he was going on a nihilistic speech against dreams the first time he showed up. How would he not know that he became more like Rick? He leaves his machine and approaches her, and he's actually complaining about the fact that her plan to get them to a world without Rick backfired because they ended up being on opposing sides in a world he took over. It turns out that Summer's the reason why Ugly Morty's so ugly. And that's the full extent of the explanation. That's it. That doesn't explain why he's a Klingon head. Why would she merely scar him and magically change the shape of his eyes instead of, like, injuring him? How could you do that by accident? Throw a chemical vial that he conveniently had right there? At least she feels guilty for it, like an actual good sister. So it's reaffirming her conscience. At least she feels guilty and awkwardly tries to apologize as he lampshades that it wasn't Rick who did this. Then Morty goes full-on emotions rather than logic mode, saying that he didn't die or suffer in all those other worlds because of Rick. Yes, he did. He says that bad stuff just happens, before and after Rick. The universe just hates him. That's not the point. His life is obviously a lot more dangerous and traumatizing with Rick, and he should know that. Just a few issues ago, he thought he watched him die. Now I do support them adventuring together, but only because of the meta logic that makes for great stories. Like, he contrasts Rick, he's his conscience. But logically he should be staying away from him. Like you'd expect from the idiot sidekick, Morty's argument really falls apart. Sure, he'll always be suffering regardless of Rick, but Rick clearly makes things a lot worse. The other him did turn evil because of Summer, because she was the one whose idea was it to go to this planet in the first place, though she didn't know. Also, again, realistically, there's no way there would only be one world out of infinite realities where there was no Rick. But it's also even more unrealistic that Summer would have actually been able to check all infinite realities. So chances are she's wrong and exaggerating, and there's tons of Rickless worlds. She just got unlucky. Somehow, Ugly Morty totally agrees with Morty, despite how much he hates Rick. I guess he's just using this as an excuse to apologize to his sister because he loves her. He says he's sorry to his sister. They have a sweet hug where Morty smiles. And then Jerry crashes a giant machine into them and they die. Well, to be fair, I thought it was insultingly overly easy that Ugly Morty admitted he was wrong. Morty had a point, but a really weak one that could completely miss the point Summer hammered into him. But still, aside from the walkers thing killing hobos, we've never seen any proof that Ugly Morty was a bad ruler who was making life on his planet miserable. All we've ever seen is that the rebels want him overthrown because they want the status quo back. So he didn't really deserve this overly mean-spirited death, where Morty magically gets sent to safety by being hit by the machine, but they get run over. Although, I was smiling talking about it, because I guess it works as dark comedy, because it just came after something sweet. But again, he has a terrible design, and he made up with his sister way too condescendingly easily. So I think this happened as an apology for it from the writer. I'd rather he get redeemed than not, even if it was forced. But it was almost pointless if he got killed right afterwards. Jerry at least tries to lighten the mood as he says, "Jerry's back, and he's the hero!" Because he has no idea how wrong he is. Sure was lucky for Jerry they knew how to drive that giant complex machine properly without lethally crashing and getting himself killed. Logically, he wouldn't have even tried to drive it, or would screw up and not even make it this far. He sure was lucky that someone apparently insisted on teaching him how to drive that thing for no reason, just in case they needed to. They could have had at least one sentence that said that someone put a machine on his head, Phil of the Future style, that taught him what he needed to know about driving it in seconds. I mean, he did overthrow the tyrant of the world by killing Ugly Morty, but I mean, how do you know that his replacement is going to be any better? I mean, he built the whole system of the planet around his dictatorship. Who's going to replace him? Beth? Jerry? I guess Beth would be a little better. But if even someone as pure good as Morty could end up an evil dictator, what if Beth did too? I mean, this isn't guaranteed a happy ending. Then Beth shows up, helping Rick walk over here. Jerry says, "Uh-oh." And Rick just snarks that it looks like he screwed something up. Morty just says sadly that he should go home because this place sucks, and refuses to talk about what happened back there, probably because he knows how Rick would be snarky and apathetic. Wait a minute. Can't Jerry just use the blood to clone a new Morty in Summer? Rick showed in the show that he can make a clone from DNA and then immediately age it up. And this is a cyberpunk world that got taken over by a genius Morty. So the knowledge of something like cloning technology would be a lot more widespread, or at least be a thing that Jerry and Beth would have access to. If Rick can make a ton of clones of himself that he can transfer his consciousness to upon death, and Morty's being compared to Rick, then doesn't this mean that Jerry and Beth could just bring their kids back in second? If they love their kids, they'd want them back. Sure, they wouldn't be able to outright transfer their consciousness to them, so it would technically just be clones taking over their lives. I guess we're supposed to assume that despite being just as smart as Rick, Ugly Morty didn't make Project Phoenix so he could immediately wake up from the dead in a clone body. But he could have. He's a tyrant. He'd have to prepare for that kind of thing. He's paranoid as it is. The point is, it's unnecessary to not ever show us this inevitable consequence, and instead expect us to believe these two just stayed dead in a world with perfect cloning technology and a Project Phoenix. By not showing us Ugly Morty being brought back and his sister getting a clone of herself made, it's implying that the writer actually didn't think of this, which is confusing since he was self-aware and smart enough to lampshade that Beth still tortured Rick, and that there's still Morty in a Rickless world. That's already better than Sonic standards. So bottom line, this didn't need to be as depressing as Morty thinks it is, and it's forced that it is. In fact, couldn't he just ask Rick directly to make clones of the two? Sure, Rick would seriously question why he would bring Tyrant Morty back, but he'd clone a new Summer if he asked. The story ends with Rick desperately trying to lighten the mood as Morty steps in a bucket from earlier, and he insists that the writer made a satisfying conclusion because it proves the universe does hate Morty. Which just comes off as clueless because, first of all, this wouldn't have happened if it weren't for Rick's influence on his life, because the bucket probably wouldn't be there, so it doesn't prove his argument that the world would mistreat him without Rick. 2, I guess the reason Rick knows that Morty was saying the universe hates him is that it's all just a part of the fourth wall breaking, because he wasn't there for that. And 3, a satisfying ending would obviously be the ugly Morty being returned to consciousness in his own Project Phoenix, naturally without an ugly face anymore, because why would he make his clone have that scarring? And him being good and bringing back his sister as a clone. Hell, he could have made a Project Phoenix for her too. She is his sister after all, and he sure made up with her easy for someone who said he had no sister last story. And if he's supposed to be better than Rick as a person, which is how Morty's supposed to be, you'd imagine that Morty capable of making a Project Phoenix would not just make one for himself, but for the rest of his family too. Like, Rick only doesn't do that because he doesn't care. They're infinite versions of his family. This arc was kind of a mess. Too grim, too confusing with the voodoo shark trying to retcon why this Morty's a genius. It was engaging and captivating seeing a tyrant Morty, but it missed the mark because we barely saw any of his evil deeds against the country he ruled over, so all of the potential was kept off screen instead of reached. We didn't get the full impact of him being a villain. And even his plan to kill all the Ricks comes off as more of a genuine, well-intentioned service to the multiverse than an actual evil plan. Although, he could have... I guess brainwashing is impossible since we never see Rick do it, and he'll be insanely overpowered if he did, and that's probably why. If brainwashing was possible, then it would be much nicer for Morty to brainwash all the Ricks to be good instead, and if that was established as possible, then his evil plan would be irredeemably evil. But yeah, his plan on its own is clearly well-intentioned. So it was needlessly mean-spirited to have him anticlimactically killed off by Jerry by accident out of nowhere. There's only 2 reasons for this to happen. The superficial one being that it's punishing him for being ugly, and the spiteful reason that it makes up for the deus ex machina of him making up with his sister too easily. He would have just called out Morty on how wrong he was, because while bad stuff does happen, it's obviously amplified by Rick's, and he had good reasons to be mad at his sister. And while I naturally assumed she was rebelling against him for being a tyrant, the idea that she split up with him because she opposed his plan to kill all the Ricks is just a lot more confusing considering how much she hates Ricks herself. We never hear her say, you should make a brainwashing ray to make all the Ricks good instead. She never offered another idea, so of course he went with his idea. And again, realistically the 2 of them wouldn't stay dead. Beth would just get their blood sample and age up their clones at worst. She could even give the clone Morty some false memories or not replace all of his memories to make sure he won't just go back to ruling over her. So it's not like she'd have to let her son stay dead just because she doesn't want him to be a tyrant anymore and that's the only solution. She could only restore the memories from before he became a tyrant. Being dark isn't terrible by itself. In fact, it's what makes the comedy of this series a lot more funny. It shines out of the darkness. It stands out in contrast, and it's naturally written comedy instead of forced. Like with stuff like Teen Titans Go and Sonic Boom, it's always joke, 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 joke. It's not surprising. And what makes something funny is usually that you're surprised. But it is a problem when something dark staying the case is forced, Mecha Sally style, by ignoring the existence of a plot device the characters would have, just to make things dark for the sake of it. Wait a minute. Operation Phoenix, or Project, or whatever it's called, wouldn't its mere existence make the killing all Rick's plan worthless? Well, maybe because of his past experience with his own Rick, Ugly Morty knew about Operation Phoenix himself, and designed his Rick assassin to go look for the clones and destroy them every time it killed a Rick. I mean, maybe that's why the green monster didn't just stay there after killing the Rick, and instead actually tried to kill the Morty too. It had another job to do. His plan has to involve the destruction of all the clones as well. After all, the Rick that Ugly Morty had killed wouldn't have been so panicked about getting killed if he thought he was just gonna come back as a clone and be able to hide, wait for it to leave, live out his life in safety. He would have just let it kill him to trick it. Same goes for C-132 Comic Rick. He was still afraid of getting killed by it. Meta-logic-wise, I wouldn't be surprised if this issue was released before it was revealed in the show that Project Phoenix is even a thing in the first place, so of course the comic writers couldn't have thought of that. But it was still possible that Rick did that. Could have still been an idea that could have come up to them. So in-universe wise, maybe he already assumed that if it was specifically made by someone familiar with Ricks to hunt Ricks, that person would know better than to assume he'd have won that easily. Especially since Season 4 revealed that there's tons of alternate universe Ricks who didn't scrap their Phoenix project. And somehow Rick teleported to another universe just to wake up in a clone body every time he died. But if that Deus Ex Machina nonsense is the case, doesn't that mean that killing all the Ricks is impossible because every time one gets killed, he'll just wake up in a clone body in another universe anyways? That kinda hurts stakes, but it's a good thing that episode had him take so long to get back to normal then. I guess Ugly Morty either planned for that, and planned on destroying all of the clones ever as well, and the assassin thing killing the Ricks was just something he did on the way, or he would have found out about that eventually anyways and switched to trying to plan around that project when he learned that he was making no actual progress. It still would have been a scary inconvenience to the Ricks having to let a green assassin kill them to fool Ugly Morty, who might have never checked in the universe afterwards. And then possibly have to go through a whole bunch of Bash's universes killing themselves over and over until they got to one that let them go home. But if Ugly Morty never actually knew about their stakes diminishing immortality technology, then his plan would be doomed to be a waste of time. I wonder if Evil Morty would make the same mistake, or if he already knows about that project from Rick. I guess he'd have to kidnap all of the Ricks while he has their Project Phoenixes destroyed to keep them from stopping him building another one. But even then, there's infinite realities, so wouldn't it be literally impossible for him to destroy all the Project Phoenixes? I guess Evil Morty literally was just trying to kill all those Ricks to lure show Rick to him. Because if he really cared about that, then he would have killed all the Ricks in the Citadel. But maybe he did, who knows? He'd actually have more luck in just imprisoning them, because killing them would just teleport them back to a cushy home. Or they'd at least be able to kill themselves to eventually get to a cushy home. And again, if there's an infinite amount of Ricks, then it would be by definition impossible to get rid of all of them. It'd take an infinite amount of time to do that. So maybe it would be unrealistic for someone as smart as Evil Morty, let alone Ugly Morty, to realistically keep on going with that plan, because he'd have to realize it was impossible to fully complete. He'd have to snap out of the denial eventually, or he could at least admit that he's just doing it for stress relief, and has no hope of actually getting rid of them all. So I guess they would keep doing it for fun, and even if they can't get rid of them all, Ugly Morty still thinks it'd be a service, because Ricks can be evil. So he might think it's worth doing even if he can't do it for every reality, because at least he's doing it for some of them. It'd have been smarter of him if he actually realized this and admitted the futility of his ultimate goal at some point. But no. I just had another thought. Is it possible that there are other realities that have Ricks being just born at the same time as this Rick? I mean, even the idea that every single version of Earth would be exactly the same age, and therefore have humanity around for exactly the same amount of years, is already hard to believe. It's more likely that there would be various different Earths that would be in different eras from each other, simply because they happen to be formed at different times than other Earths. So humanity took longer to progress to the same point. So there could be Earths that are 80 years behind from a certain perspective. Because humanity started like 80 years earlier, and so did every other era on the planet. It's not like it's literally behind in time, just that the planet's of different age. My point is, Ugly Morty would definitely be fighting a losing battle, because it's possible that for every Rick he kills, a lot more new Ricks are already being born and make up for it. This would mean that no matter what he does, the population of Ricks will always be growing, actually. I say always, because it's possible that there will always be a universe out there whose planet is at the age where it could have a Rick being born on it, no matter how much time passes in the multiverse as a whole. Which would mean that no matter what, there would always be some Ricks alive, just like there'd always be a lot of other people. No matter how much time has passed, Ugly Morty still didn't think his plan through enough to realize that. But it makes sense because he's only focused on his emotion when wanting to see that plan through. He's mad, he wants revenge, he's doing it out of spite. So maybe it makes sense that he isn't thinking past that point and letting himself think his plan would ever have no hope of success because he doesn't want to. Also, does he have only one measly green assassin? Or is there really a bunch of them at once doing things all at once? Or does he at least plan to have that be the case eventually? Because again, since there's so many parallel universes, he'd take an eternity to get rid of all the Ricks by trying to kill them one at a time. But we might be expected to believe that's how it's going, because doesn't the first one we see follow the other Morty to Morty's universe? And the scientists talked as if this seed was brand new. But I guess it makes sense that there's only one of these things if we believe that's made out of some rare, hard-to-make material, since it needs to make it out of that so it can safely go through a weak portal. Well, see, I guess it's too hard to just make a whole army. Plus he's using a portal gun that's really low on battery, so he's lucky he can even make one portal for it. Let alone be constantly making portals for years. So it would have to be one at a time. No wonder he tried to retrieve an actual portal gun. If he didn't try to do that, his plan to kill all the Ricks would have had no chance of success because the battery would have inevitably run out. And he's somehow not smart enough to just make a portal gun of his own yet, when he's like Rick in every other way but alcoholism. I guess whenever the assassin tries to kill a Rick, he ends up destroying his portal gun in the process. And as a result, that's why Ugly Morty can't just get a portal gun from a Rick he killed. Because the portal gun is always with the Rick. Or the portal gun was just not somewhere that the monster could find it. He's been assassinating Ricks for years, apparently. There's no way he couldn't have gotten one of their portal guns. That's a plot hole, actually. It's a very good thing he couldn't get a portal gun, because otherwise he wouldn't have kept Rick alive, and he would have mass-produced portal guns so he can make a huge amount of portals and kill Ricks a lot faster. But how does he find it satisfying to leave it up to other people instead of doing all the killing himself anyways? He's not the one getting his revenge. He's making monsters kill steal for him. At least Evil Morty was doing it himself. So he really isn't doing it for the sadism. He's doing it because he's trying to do the right thing, like he said. So it wouldn't be a deal breaker. But yeah, that is a pretty big plot hole. With all the different Ricks that he killed over the years, you'd think that eventually the monster would end up getting their portal gun. The last Rick that was killed, we didn't see his portal gun get destroyed. Why didn't the monster get it?